was asked pretty much last minute if I would step in and moderate this debate or forum because the person who was going to do it had to pull out last minute. So I said yes, but I'm also just looked at the questions yesterday for the first time that has been submitted, and we're going to try to have some time at the end for people in the audience to ask questions directly. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to start. Theoretically, this mic works. I don't know if the other mic is working yet. If you want to try it, put it up in one spot and see your red dot. Your little red light is on. Try it again. Anyway, so but I'll pass it down so we can hear. And so what I'm going to start with is a quick introduction from everybody. I'm going to start with Nathan and we'll hand it down. Does that make sense? So 1 minute for introduction.
Hi, how you doing? How's everyone? Good. My name is Nathan Biah. I'm a high school principal in Providence, Rhode Island. I've been in education now for over 25 years. I taught at Classical High School, assistant principal at Mount Pleasant, and Penny Green Middle School. And currently High School, where principal Dr. George Alvarez High School. And I'm also with State Representative Expo. I'm currently in the state rep for District 3. And so I'm a proud member of the North End and Smithville. I grew up over on Duke Street. I worked at Better Big and Earthen Vessel. Worked at St. Patrick's with my little brother Biah. So I'm a proud Smithville resident. And we're running to be the next state senator for representative. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Niyoka Powell. I am a longtime Providence resident, specifically in the north end of Providence. I moved here from Connecticut for college, went to Rhode Island College, and just never left. The city of Providence has become my home from immigrating here from Jamaica at the age of 9, moving to Connecticut, doing grade school in Connecticut, and then moving to the city of Providence. I've worked in many of the different healthcare facilities. Healthcare has always been my career, from being a CNA to a mental health worker to a nurse. I've worked at Roger Williams, I've worked at Butler Hospital, and I currently work in manufacturing as a clinic nurse in occupational health. I am running to be the next representative of the Senate for this district because I feel that we need someone who understands what is going on when it comes to healthcare, what it means to be safe in our cities, and what it means to take care of our children in school. I have a 6-year-old, and she has had quite the difficult times when it comes to finding a placement in Connecticut, in the public schools here in Providence. So currently, not really by choice, but by choice, she is currently in the private school system. So school choice is very important to us. I hope to be able to just represent you in any way I can and provide with policies that help the community as a whole.
Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Bissaillon. I too am a candidate in the Democratic primary, which will be held 1 week from today. The summer has gone by pretty fast. We're all here under unfortunate circumstances due to the passing of our longtime state senator, Mary Ellen Goodwin. And this is a critical special election because the person that will be elected in this state Senate seat will have a lot of work cut out from them and big shoes to fill. I decided to throw my name in the ring because I think that there are some very basic needs that the Senate District 1 faces, and they center on our most basic needs: housing, public safety, and public education. I came to Providence to go to Providence College. That was half my life ago, 18 years ago. I graduated Providence College in 2009. I've always lived in the city, primarily on Douglas Avenue and now in Elmhurst behind the Newport Creamery. And I believe that I'm the best candidate for the job because no one knows better than me. I currently serve as Chief of Staff to the Senate, the job day in and day out of the state senator. And if you entrust me with your vote, I will certainly work day in and day out to deliver critical services and resources to this community and really work to improve our public education system and deal with Providence's housing crisis. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michelle Rivera, and I'm running for state senate because I really care about my community. up in poverty. I'm a product of public housing. I lived over half my life in Chad Brown. I graduated from public schools, went to Rhode Island College after serving in the military. And then I went to get my master's in social work because for me it's really been an important part of my life to help people. So right now I do policy and advocacy work at a small nonprofit, advocating for a lot of different kinds of legislations that are going to help our most underserved communities, such as, school meals, free school meals for all. I've done a lot of advocacy work since graduating. I'm tired of the same old over and over and over. I think we need change. I'm not a polished politician. I'm just a regular person from the community that cares about my community and that is a very, very passionate advocate. And I want to see my community succeed together as a whole. And that's why I'm running.
Okay, thank you. Before I get too far into this, I want to mention that the League of Women Voters has a table over there, and they have a lot of voter information there. So if you need to avail yourself of that, it's there. They're really nice people. Talk to them a bit. So I'm going to start with the first question, and I guess I'll start at the other end. Yeah, Jake, you can go first. Yeah. And the first question is, what have you learned while canvassing in District 1 from the residents about what they need, what they want?
That's a great question, and it's pretty consistent no matter where you go in the district: Elmhurst, North End, Wanskup, Smith Hill, housing. And it's across the entire continuum, whether we're talking about rent affordability, home ownership affordability, homelessness. It's really a conversation that occurs on every doorstep, or quite frankly, down by behind Charles Place, at least up until last week. And that is an issue that permeates really every other aspect of policy decision-making that we're going to confront at the State House. Over the last several years, due to the influx of federal funds, we've dedicated a large swath of those funds to dealing with Rhode Island's housing crisis, over $300 million. But the issue, and I think you don't have to go very far once you leave this door to find out, is that a lot of that money has not hit doorsteps in our streets yet. It's taking a while to get through the pipeline. Some of that is just an unfortunate reality that we have to deal with. But as that funding goes out, I think it's also important that we build on policies that help everyday Rhode Islanders either break the cycle of rent and establish a new pathway to home ownership, get into a shelter, maybe by building more low barrier housing, or also just afford to rent in their place and deal with having more money in their pocket through avenues such as rent control and such as that. So really, I don't think going into this I would have seen such a multi-dimensional issue such as housing on every doorstep being talked about. And that's it.
I'm going to give everybody else 90 seconds or so.
Same question.
Same question.
Okay.
Yep.
Currently, utilities, as they're projected to go up again another 25% in the state, really, but primarily in the district. A lot of constituents are concerned about that, considering that we've already had a 50% increase this year alone. So if you think about it, your utilities are going to be going up another, 25%. So that's 75% in less than a year, and that's focus. The state really needed to have stepped in on that and said enough is enough. They have the authority to do so, and they have not. And for the community, I would be that voice that says, no, we're not doing this. Not to the people who are already struggling. We already know the cost of food. We already see gas prices going up. I've already seen my gas tank go up $15 already, and it's not winter yet. So at the end of the day, we really need to focus on what's really happening right now, not what's projected to come down the road with the federal funds through the pipelines. It's right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. So these concerns that basically that I've been dealing with ever since I was a high school principal. High school is a microcosm of our real world society. We have like our mental health. So as I walk through like canvassing, those are some of the issues like our constituents are talking about: mental health, the quality of life, and also when our students graduate from Rhode Island, why they're not staying in the state. Also, they live in the state because there's an opportunities that are not here, and also where our diversity within overall our state government. So those are things that that to deal with as a high school principal, and as a canvassing, this is the same thing I'm hearing again that's going around. And as a state rep, I've been working along with our, again, as Jake alluded to, the reason why we are here because of our champion, the late Senator Goodwin. She was the beacon of our district. There's no one can replace her. So no one can replace her. We tried working with her as a state rep and to continue to do the work that we're for our constituent and our District 1. So these are things that I'm not new to this, so this is like why I made me the best candidate, because I've been working with her as a state rep, and it's like you should not be a high school principal and as a state rep, and to be a state senator, be much more to bring diversity in state government. We need jobs for our students to stay here. We need opportunity for our kids when they graduate from college or from high school. These are things that we don't have in the state.
Okay, thank you. And that right down.
When I'm talking to my neighbors on the door, I hear this same story over and over and over. Our neighbors are struggling. The cost of living is just way too expensive in Rhode Island, in our district, and we have people who are being pushed out of the neighborhoods that they've lived in their entire lives because they can no longer afford to stay there. Because the rents are too high, the utilities are too high, the taxes are too high. Our community is getting squeezed out of the place that they've called home for so long. And that's what I'm hearing door after door. And I see it, not just with my neighbors, but I too face the same issues that my neighbor faces. Utilities are high, housing instability. It's all too common in our district, and I'd love to help make some change.
Thank you very much. My next question is related a little bit, especially to what Jake said, but we can start with you, Michelle. Affordable housing and available housing is a critical issue for the district. What specific answers do you have for this crisis? And I'm trying to hold everybody to a minute this time rather than 90 seconds. Thank you. Affordable and available housing is a critical issue for the district. What specific answers do you have for this crisis?
So I am for rent control / rent stabilization. I think we need to stop giving all these subsidies and TSAs to wealthy developers to come and build these luxury apartments under the pretense that they're affordable. I think we need to build low income and public housing to really make a dent in the housing crisis that we currently have right now.
Okay, we'll send it down to Nathan and we'll move it across.
So you were even asking about affordable housing. Like I probably would even go a tier down from affordable housing, because affordable housing, if we actually take that down, the average income for people in District 1 is about 37 to 40,000. So affordable housing, you're looking at people, your average income should be about 70, 75. So people won't be able to afford affordable housing. How are we talking about creating low income housing? That would be the difference between affordable and low income. So that people that live in District 1 will deal with the low income housing. But affordable housing from the state level, affordable housing talking about income level about between 70 and 75. So less than 50% of the people that live in District 1 don't make that amount of money annually. So my plan is to work to create much more low income housing for the people, and also try to work with company like Strath, who kick your family out of their apartment to create we're renting one bedroom to just college students for $900, while families are left out of the core because they're not making money, so Strath is taking families out. So those are some of the things I've been working on. I just did next is Canada.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay. Aside from Strive and all the other corporations coming in and taking all of these cuts in taxes, I think we should have just, cut the property taxes on the residents and put it back to where it was, if not lower. Because when corporations come in, they are making money from the economy within Providence. Increasing property taxes for the people living in Providence only hurts the families that live in Providence, generations after generations who've lived in the same home in Providence. Not only that, but when you have the corporations coming in, you're taking away from the family values of the district, because you're putting more into the brain drain that happens here in the city of Providence, where you have students coming in and leaving in a rotating cycle, where you will then have to flip the bill for whatever doesn't happen with the next coming school years. If the rates of students going off to school doesn't equate to the properties that they have, the city then has to take care of those property taxes and the losses. And we started this year with an excess of funds. Where's that money going?
So housing is definitely a very complicated issue, and it affects individuals throughout a continuum of socioeconomic needs. I like to break it down. Over the last few years, we've passed over 24 laws at the General Assembly that make it easier to build housing in the state of Rhode Island. It's a very supply-sided approach. We've also channeled a number of funds to dealing with the issue. But really, when it boils down to is when we talk about homelessness, we need more low-barrier housing where individuals can get into shelter and deal with wraparound services. It's not necessarily just getting services once a week if you're living behind Charles Place. So I think the state has to become much more active in building low-barrier housing. The other thing that we have to do is, and it's an approach that's taken in Maryland, when we talk about direct build of public housing, I think what we want to see there is not just a direct build and then leave it alone. What we want to do is almost make it self-sustaining. So you have folks in there that come, they're not just Section 8, they're not just voucher, but they also are at different income levels, so the model and the rents that they pay can make it self-sustaining. And then the third thing is dealing with these corporate entities that Niyoka alluded to, Representative Biah alluded to. We can't allow them to come in and just pay cash for properties that are well over the price that a senior or something like that, individual like that ever thought they would get for their home, and then they flip it for them. So we have to give the priority of home ownership.
Thank you. Should go first this time? It's your turn. Okay. Last Friday, former Mayor Elorza, in an editorial for the Providence Journal, encouraged the Democratic Party to embrace school choice. Do you? Why or why not?
I embrace school choice. I think that with everything that is happening in our communities right now, the least we can do is give a parent the choice to put their child in a school that they feel that's one less thing that they have to worry about. Currently, the city of Providence started the school year, or is starting the school year, with over 130 less teachers this year. Remember, during the pandemic, they were already down 90-some, almost 100 teachers less last year. So I'm not sure if that number is adding on top of it. I'm pretty sure it is. So now we're, let's say, 200 plus teachers for the city of Providence. So giving the parents the ability to put their children wherever they need to and have those funds, have those public funds follow the student, will actually increase a likelihood of that student succeeding during this recession. For example, it's $17,500 just for one student in the city of Providence. The school in which my child is going to is $6,000 a year. That's 2.5 years of school for my child. One child in Providence, 2.5 years in a school of choice.
Thank you. Sure. Ethan.
What's the question?
Okay, the question is about Mayor Elorza's editorial in the Providence Journal encouraging school choice. Do you? Why or why not?
All right, now, in regards to school choice, so let's just be upfront with this. Well, school choice, that's fine to have no problem with school choice, but now the question that lies is where we're talking about charter school choice, definitely, but like my thing is like, we're not going to take money away from public schools to put it in charter schools, right? Because we need to build our public schools. Our public schools teachers are one of the best public schools teachers in the state, right? They are, and the concern with that is like we're trying to find when students are taken away from the public school and go to the charter school, those funds are delivered with that, right? Those funds are going with that. However, students have been expelled, taken away from charter school and returned to the public school before the funds coming back to them. So the public school serve all students. Charter school doesn't serve all students, right? So my question, like, that's fine. I think we should create another funding for charter school that does not interfere with the funding of the public schools.
Okay, thank you. Get it all the way down.
Michelle?
I kind of agree with Representative Biah on a couple of topics he touched. I would like our public schools to have sufficient funding, and I don't like seeing some of that public school funds going to charter schools. I think we really, really need to strengthen and enforce our public schools so that every child has the right to great and quality education, not just those that are fortunate enough to get into charter schools.
Okay.
I agree with the end of what Michelle was saying. It's really by no accident that that op-ed was written by Mayor Elorza, who now works for Democrats for Education Reform, who's backed by, quite frankly, corporate charter schools. And as Representative Biah alluded to, it's no accident that it's cheaper to educate a child in a charter school than in a public school, and that is because they don't have the same ratio of special needs students, they don't have the same ratio of ELL students. We absolutely need to return our focus. We have taken our eye off the ball when it comes to public education in the city of Providence because we've gotten caught up in the argument of charter schools and that sort of thing during 2 terms of Elorza. So, whether it's really, quite frankly, the current expansion plan already calls for 44% of our seats to go to public charter schools. A core function of government is providing strong public schools. So, as Niyoka alluded to, 200 teachers handing in their resignation, I mean, that's the kind of unpredictability that occurs when you're in this back and forth between public or charter. I say, let's return our focus to improving Providence public schools, start the discussion there, and work to build that predictability and sustainability so that at least every child has that option.
Not to cut you off, sorry. Let's start with Nathan. Next question. Police Chief Perez is looking to have a 500-person police force. The former police commander for District 1 said that in order to have a neighborhood foot patrol where neighbors and officers were in a daily familiar relationship would require 600 or 700-person force. Is it worth it?
Yes, I think so. And the reason why that we need it were the quality of life in the city. As people in the neighborhood, people need to work, resident and constituent needs to work, come home and feel safe in the very homes in the very community. Kids should be able to get out there and play freely. Parents shouldn't be worried about what's going to be going on within the neighborhood. Just public safety itself by itself. Those are one of the concerns that have been brought to my attention as I canvass around the area. Talking about public safety, so definitely. And currently, I think we are currently shut. We have about 400 plus police officers currently right now. I think just to have like a foot patrol around, we need about 500 plus. So currently, we just have we are 100 shut, and I think increasing the number that will increase the the quality of life in here and public safety that people talk about. Right on Virginia Lane. For every time I hang around and walk around that area, Virginia Lane, people talk about where constituents speak about where they need more police presence. And right in front of my own house, every day, cars parked in front of my own house, transactions going on. When you call the police, it takes them forever for them to come, and you ask, they're shut. So these are things that people, thank you.
Yeah.
I would definitely have more of a police presence in the city of Providence, especially because we are a sanctuary city. When you have a mixture of cultures that don't typically reside in an area, you're going to see an increase in crime. I grew up part of my childhood in the worst areas of Jamaica and know what that is like to have, shootings and killings of your next door neighbors without, any police presence whatsoever. And as you can see in the past couple of months, you've seen an uptick of violence within the city borders. So I really would love to see more, officers walking the beat, being a little bit more familiar with the neighborhood and seeing who's living in our areas, because it's not to go and harass someone, it's just to understand what cultures are living here and how they go about their day-to-day lives and be able to work together as a community as opposed to singling out different groups.
Thank you. Your timing is impeccable. Yeah, go ahead.
Just go down line.
Yeah, let's go.
No matter where you go in Senate District 1, no matter the neighborhood, on every door where it's brought up, everyone wants more police presence. And I think we also have to talk about what that presence looks like. A lot of times what you hear is that you only see the police when after you've made the phone call or after a tragedy. And people are kind of crying out for that same community policing stuff that folks had. They feel like they had 20 years ago in this community if they were here, or they'd like to at least give it a try because they feel like a lot of times the police are just driving by in their cruisers. Along that, hand in hand with that, I think we also need transparency and accountability when it comes to policing. 2 years ago, we were able to ensure through state law and state budget funds that every patrol officer would wear a body camera. That's critical to ensuring transparency and accountability. I think we do need Leah Board reform. Hopefully we can get that done next year. And I would add that the final thing that you also hear about is that we need those 100 new recruits to better reflect what this city looks like in terms of our police force. Just like as we can hope to hire more teachers, they look like the kids that are in front of them. Diversity in our workforce is critically important.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you. Jake made a lot of great points. Community policing. I hear it too when I'm speaking to voters. They want to see more police presence, especially in the area of Chad Brown. They'd rather feel safe when they go out and have police presence than not have that police presence there. That area is particularly prone to violence, and people need that sense of safety. They shouldn't feel afraid to walk their dog after the sun goes down or walk to the store. So more policing, community policing programs, specifically that involves underserved communities and youth.
Thank you. Well, hold on to that. I'll just go right back. I'm sorry, this might be random. I'm not sure I'm going to get that. Recently, we have become familiar with the difficulty of securing signatures and addresses for nominating papers for elective office. What better ways are there for qualifying to be on the ballot? Or is the present system fine?
To be honest with you, I used to think the present system was fine until I went up against it. I followed the law, I followed the rules, and I collected signatures how I was told to and how I was supposed to do so. And not every other candidate did so. And I went against the Board of Elections and raised some ballot concerns, and they decided to interpret the law completely different than what was written. So I'm not sure what other system we can use, but the current one has really let me down. They're supposed to uphold the integrity of our elections, and they haven't. We have some individuals who made it to the ballot and who, attested that the signatures that were on their sheet, they saw someone signed and they didn't. So we have people who have lied under oath and gotten, people who submitted false papers and have still gotten to be on the ballot. I'm sure our Representative Biah would like to take this one.
That's okay. Chief, you go next. We'll just do it order. We'll get there.
So I think our democracy thrives best when there's plenty of choice on the ballot. And quite frankly, I think if someone wants to run for office, really there shouldn't be any barrier to them running for office other than they're a resident of the district they seek to represent. So I think the signature process, what you've seen is that it happens over a condensed period of time, and as a result, consequently, individuals sometimes either rely on other individuals who, under that pressure, do things that are wrong, or maybe they have to resort to less scrupulous means. So really, the system I would support is if someone under our Constitution, if you're a resident for more than 30 days in the area, you're qualified to vote there. I think that should also be the case for individuals who want to run for office. I think that Our democracy thrives best. It would be best if we had another 5 people who were up here and we were all talking, and maybe we can talk about what that electoral process after that should look like, whether it's ranked choice voting or something like that. But I don't really think there should be any signature requirement. I think our time is best spent just going out and knocking on doors.
Thank you.
That's a really good question. Definitely the signatures need to be checked in a way that is across the board. We either use one system or no system whatsoever and get rid of the signatures. Because, you know, I know for a fact my signature changes practically every year. And if we're looking at something from the DMV that I signed when I was 18 years old, or, you know, 4 years ago, it looks completely different now. I can attest to that. So when you have those types of discrepancies and signatures are being discarded because of that fact, then our system is flawed and it is broken and we need to do something else. And, you know, if you are a resident of that area, there's, you know, the same system tells you that that person's a resident of that area and tells you that that's their address. So I don't know why we have to go based on a signature rather than address to look up if that person actually lives there. Granted, that would be flawed too. I'm sure people can find ways as to how to do this and how to go underneath it all. But when it really boils down to it, it's the representation, it's the voting come November of who's going to represent you in the district.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah, I do agree with Jake and Niyoka for those. As long as you are a resident of the district, this is democracy. Right? This is democracy. As long as you're a resident of the district, you should be able to vote. You should be able to sign any of our papers for a candidate to be on the ballot. In addition to that, there are a few states, right? In our constitution, states are like 30 days you could be on it. And there are some people that move like 2-3 streets away, right? Then now you check them, you check your signatures. Oh well, this person's not a signature. So like just one example, an 87 years old lady on oxygen. Her signature is got from my paper because why? Because the way she signed, it was not like this lady's on oxygen, right? And you sign her name, but because the signature didn't match like 4 years ago signature. So is that true democracy? Like a kicking eliminating her name from that? No. So this is something to think about. All the states that did some research on signature, all the states have 2-tier system. And the 2-tier system is like you can either candidate can choose to do the signature, or a candidate, for example, like a state senatorial seat, we need 100 signature. You can choose to go and do the 100 signature, or you can pay $1,000. So those are like so those are all the states are going towards going through all of this stuff as a signature scan.
I think you off again.
Thank you.
Sorry. Let's start with you this time. This is an interesting question. I had not what I would have thought to ask. Providence Place owners will be requiring a new tax treaty with the city council. What should be the role for the District 1 senator in that discussion?
For
The Providence Place Mall,
oh, okay.
their tax treaty is ended, or will be ending, and they want a new tax treaty, they want to do something new. What is the role of a District 1 senator in that discussion? Because this is something that affects all of Providence. I mean, it's an interesting question, but I'm not sure. So if you have something to say about it, let me know.
Well, it goes back to the corporate tax breaks, right? We're not doing any more corporate tax breaks until the residents of the city can actually find a means of dealing with the situations we're currently in. I understand that the mall will probably be vacant for a little bit, but
I think what it is they want to do some renovations, and as part of the renovations, they want a big tax treaty to maybe help pay
yeah,
for it.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's pretty elementary, given they had a tax break. So they had 20, I would imagine it was 20 or maybe 25 to prepare for this. I think that's exactly what's wrong with tax stabilization agreements, is that a lot of times they occur at a set rate and then they jump up, and then developers will use that jump up as an excuse to go get another one, as opposed to a ramp up. I didn't mean to be on my phone, but what I was looking to see was if Providence Place Malls in Senate District 1. I think it's just... No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's just outside the state houses.
I
No,
heard
that's fine. I just,
yeah.
I mean, so, I mean,
But
but
should the
as,
state well,
as a
yeah,
senator
should
for
the
the
state
capital
involved?
city, you know, I think certainly we've talked about housing up here. If they're gonna turn that into housing, we would wanna make sure that we use our heavy hand in the state legislature to make sure that there's an affordable blend probably of housing options there, whether you're talking about condos and home ownership, or whether you're talking about rents and making sure that those are affordable rents. And certainly, if you're talking about condos, you want to make sure that some of those are deed restricted for affordable housing. And I mean, I would not want to see the developer get any sort of deal, but if so, it would have to be contingent on a large swath of dollars being put into an affordable housing trust or something of that nature.
We've seen
And probably mixed-use development
Yeah,
too.
we've seen a state get involved in Providence before when it
Yeah,
comes to these things.
Yeah,
so-
Superman, all that.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
But I wasn't sure, it's not in the district, just to be clear.
Yeah.
With my colleagues here, I'm not for continuing to give subsidies to huge corporate interests over and over. I'm for protecting the interests of my neighbors and the residents of Senate District 1, as well as our small business owners. And I believe that does not include giving huge tax breaks to these large corporations.
Thank you. And Nathan, I guess, sorry to make you last again. Not on purpose.
I mean, I think I agree with what my colleagues up here basically agree with.
By the way, I did not send.
I tend to agree with my colleagues out there, like giving tax breaks to work with the developer at this time, though. I think that's Rhode Islanders, we have to learn giving tax breaks. We'll learn exactly what has happened. So we're at this time, if they won't probably bring in housing, affordable housing, those things, then we'll probably be on the pod to start discussing those concerns.
All right, thank you. Hold on to that. We'll start with you this time. The state constitution requires a referendum every 10 years to decide whether or not to hold a state constitutional convention. November 2024, the Secretary of State shall submit the question to the voters. Prior to the vote by qualified electors, there will be a bipartisan preparatory commission to assemble information on constitutional questions for the electors. Can we count? Let me see how we ask this. Can we count on your outreach to your constituents for their input as to what amendments are needed?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Yes.
And do you think we should have, should we have a constitutional convention? I mean, the last time we passed in the last 3, I think? The last one we had was in 82, I think. I mean, Governor Chafee was part of that, right? As a delegate.
I mean, I think as democracy, I think definitely we should always, we can just say, well, we will not do that. I think we should always go back and really look at it and go through the process. That's why we're probably going to vote for it again, but at the same time, it has to be out there for the procedures for people to know exactly.
So you think we should have one? Or
Yes, we should.
Yeah, we should have it.
Definitely. Yes.
No?
I think this is the perfect time for it. I think most constituents would agree that there are some things that they have concerns about when it comes to how the state of Rhode Island is run in general, and would like to have that opportunity to put their 2 cents in what is necessary for their district and what is necessary for the state. So I think, yes, we should do this.
So off the top of my head, I actually can't think of a worse time to do this, and I'll try to explain what's going through my head about this. First, it's not easy for me to say this, given that the late Whip Goodwin, the first elected spot she ever had, was part of a constitutional convention with former Congressman Blinken. But in the era of Citizens United, there is unlimited money in our politics. And one of the issues with the Constitutional Convention is then you're opening up constitutional rights that we hold dear to being impacted by advertising and all those things that come with campaigns. And what we've seen also in Rhode Island is that due to our size, is that a lot of money can go a little way. And what you're seeing right now with the Supreme Court doing what they're doing, state legislatures in our states have become the cultural battlegrounds for our society. And I would be very I'd be very nervous about opening up our state's constitution and the rights that we hold dear here to a constitutional convention, quite frankly.
So my answer would be yes on the Constitutional Convention, and as someone who is constantly talking with neighbors and people in the community, they would be heavily involved in the process, and I would absolutely have multiple conversations to consider their input and see, how they feel about having a constitutional convention. And if they don't want to, like I said, I started with yes, but if the community does not want to, then I'm willing to, go in with the community wants and the community feels is best for them.
Thank you. This question I'm going to ask a little differently than what's written here. We have homeless encampments throughout the state still. And right now there's a push to, at the very least, provide services of some sort, trash pickup, right? Which I think happens in many places anyway, but also like other services. What are your thoughts on encampments in general? What should be done? I know that when we evicted an encampment, they just move on to another encampment, unless there's housing, which is the ultimate solution. But barring that, which isn't going to happen for a couple of years still, what do we do and how do we serve people in these positions? And Michelle, will start right there. You have to make.
So for starters, I think encampments are a failure on our part as a state, as a city. It's really sad that we have all these encampments all over the place, and that we even evict them from these encampments, because that can have a huge negative impact on the individuals living in these encampments. I believe that we should be scheduling trash pickups and providing as much supportive services as we can. But I am for pallet shelters, pallet housing, just rapid short-term housing and supportive housing to help get these individuals out of the encampments, and not just housing and that's it. They need a wide array of services, so multiple supportive services and involving multiple agencies, not just housing, not just health, but it really takes a multidimensional approach to get these folks the help that they need and they deserve.
Thank you. Jim?
Absolutely. I think we need to provide more consistent services to the individuals that are living unhoused in our community. The individuals that are living unhoused, a lot of times through no virtue of no decision of their own, they either suffer from underlying substance use disorders, mental health disorders. They are confronting the harsh realities of life on an hourly basis. The idea that maybe once a week services, whether it's mental health counseling, there's a lot of, quite frankly, God's work that goes into caring for these individuals, but they are confronting the harsh realities of life on an hour-to-hour basis. Once a week is not nearly enough. We need to build more low-barrier housing with permanent supportive services for these individuals yesterday. I just, real quick anecdote, my next-door neighbor works at Rhode Island Housing, and he came here to work and deal with the homelessness issue, and he came here from Chicago, where he also worked in housing. And so many issues that we deal with here in Senate District 1, they feel beyond our comprehension: public education, homelessness, the housing crisis. But here in Rhode Island, because of our size, we are uniquely suited to deal with these issues. They are not beyond our measure. They are within our grasp that we can deal with them. We're talking about 300 to 400 individuals throughout our state every night. That is not 3,000 or 4,000. We can deal with this issue. We can serve as a model for other states. We got to get to work.
Thank you.
Last session I pitched an idea, and that idea was if we were going to give $30 million to the Superman building, it would come with stipulations, which would have been prepare the first 3 floors of that building to house the people who are going to be affected by homelessness. Within that, we have many colleges around the city as well that get a stipend, 40% tax breaks here and there, who have people who can work within the community. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have multiple different channels of nurses and social workers, and we have the Department of Labor and Training. My idea was get these people off the streets, get them into a place that is safe, that they can actually live a life and have the resources come to them. That would be the social outreach that the city needs at a time that it really needed it, to get these people up and out of their dark times and into the workplace.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So there are two sets of people within these encampments. As I walk around talking to them, interacting with them. So the first group is like those people basically that just think there's a housing. I said, so then the city can deal with that. The second group are those people that have like a mental health issue, like addiction and everything else. Those individuals they have like wraparound services, like and look for like short-term, like short-term and long-term facilities for those individuals. So those are things that are basically that we're working with, and currently like working with the media of our Providence right now, looking at those plans right now to start to look at all of these encampments, because those ones that was in like Senate District 1, enough and 460 Charles, that was the quality of life for those people was very, very bad, terrible. So like looking at those things, those are things that we have to take a look at first. This didn't happen overnight. It's happened over a long period of time in the state. So those are things that we have to start to look at, and we know that we just can't fix this overnight. We have to have a pretty good plan moving forward, that when this ever happen again, we have a plan to deal with it. But we have to take a look at those people and find out exactly, because I feel like there are a few people that was part of those encampments, people that had jobs before they lost their jobs, that were working with like as custodians. So those people they just want like a word home or housing, and they just move on. There is no addiction, and other people that have addiction, we give one of those wraparound services that we've been talking about, and help work with these people and move on.
Thank you. I'll just say that having covered that as a reporter, most of the people who were evicted from that encampment did not find better situations. They're in the same or worse situations than, and so just as a personal thing. Two more questions. I want to do these quick so we can get to people in the audience. Are we hard on 7:30? Okay, so we have a few minutes to do some other questions. I think we started a little late, so I'd like to stay late. So, first question, nice and short answer. Would you support term limits? Why or why not? Jim.
I don't support term limits. I think that anyone who wants to, as a qualified resident of the district, should be able to run every 2 years. That's how I feel.
Either way. Yeah, that's fine.
I support term limits because I believe the community changes, and I believe that our visitation should also change.
Niyoka?
I agree with Michelle. I think term limits are important. 30 plus years is a long time for anyone to be sitting in office without really understanding how the community around them have changed. So definitely term limits.
Yeah.
That was a bold statement.
Yes, the word at this time. No, I think where I go with Jake, when. No, I don't.
No.
So where if people in the district wants to go back and elect the candidates of the choice, and they keep electing the candidate of the choice, that means the constituent of that district is comfortable with who's representing them. So
Thank you. And my last question, and again, it's the same thing, like maybe a why or not, but do you support, we touched on this earlier too, do you support ranked choice for voting? I mean, we're going to have 30 people up here, right? Anybody can run.
No,
Well,
I don't support ranked choice voting.
So you want the winner take all?
Yeah.
Suppose we have like 11 people and somebody won with 11% of the vote. Would that be okay?
And that's 11% of the votes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
If we have 30, are you ranking them 1 through 30?
Well, I think the way it works, you can just rank the top 3. You don't have to do 30.
I mean, so I support election reform where we can actually hopefully get to a point where a majority of individuals have voted for our governor or voted for a congressman. I think that's an important reflection of a democracy. I do worry about how we get there in the form of ranked choice voting, because I think about traditional, I'll speak on behalf of Democrats, I guess. Seniors are a very important voting demographic for us, and I think what goes into educating voters to explain that process is critically important. We cannot just switch to a ranked choice voting system when it has been ingrained in folks, one person, one vote, one candidate. So I'm skeptical of that. I do think it's important to get to a place where certainly statewide office holders have earned over 50% of the vote.
I actually do support ranked choice voting, but I think there needs to be a little bit more education around it, and more awareness.
Nathan, you're in
I think that we do with the education of ranked choice voting, like at this time, if asked me at this time if I support it, I'm saying no, because if you probably walk around and ask about 20 people, if you call on the data to kind of like control it, if you ask 20 people or 25 what is ranked choice voting, how many the student will be able to articulate that well to you. So I think the education of that before we start getting into that process. Because oftentimes government just change things and people, those people that's going to be affected have no clue exactly what those things are.
Okay, thank you. I want to open it up to people to take a second. And I just want to open it up to anybody in the district who wants to ask a question. Yeah, question, raise your hand. I'll bring the mic right to you. I saw your hand go first. So. Here you go.
My name is Therese Shea, and I live in what I refer to as Mount Unpleasant. Unfortunately, I've been here since 1986. The neighborhood is challenging, to say the least. A couple days ago, I called the police about loud noise in the neighborhood. And I called them back and I said, why can't the police officers who I've seen on bicycles only downtown, not in our neighborhoods, talk to the residents and say, hey, that's super loud. Like, do you notice that we all kind of live close to each other here, And maybe not everybody wants to hear you and all your, just common courtesy. And the person on the other end of the phone told me he wasn't a police officer, just someone who answers the phone for the non-emergency line. Said the police were not able to do that unless there was a complaint. I was so irate, I started looking at the noise ordinance for the city of Providence. And I would like to read you section 16-109. Any person, including a police officer, may be a complainant for the purposes of instituting action for any violation of this article. So when you were talking earlier about adding more police officers to the street, my thing is, I don't want to confront a lot of drunk people in my neighborhood who say hi to me, but then I ask them to turn the music down, and that's a problem. That's a problem, okay? If it was a more neutral party, the police officer on the bicycle, maybe this is a better avenue to having a neighborhood that I want to die in my house. I love my house, okay? I want to stay. But the impossibility of nobody giving a crap about anybody else, it makes it unbearable to live in the city. I want to know if we can have police who actually follow through on this section.
Anybody want to comment?
So I guess I'll start off by commenting. And I only know some of this because I was at a neighborhood meeting up in the 4th Ward last month. And I believe the noise level is what represents it, 200 decibels? Yeah, 200 decibels. And in order to enforce that, they need a decibel reader. And what the department will say at this juncture, much like what they talk about when it comes to manpower, is they're understaffed and they don't have the equipment. Included in this previous year's budget was money to purchase decibel readers. So that aside, finally, hopefully having the apparatus, they now need to have the manpower because you are, as a neighbor, in a very unfortunate position because you don't want to start or perpetuate an adversarial relationship with the people living right next door to you. So citizen-driven complaints, they take that on, as you're you're worried about. So department-initiated complaints should become more the norm, so as to not isolate you, inoculate you from that sort of neighbor-to-neighbor relationship. That's why I think it's critical that we staff up our police department. 2 jobs have changed tremendously over the last 3 decades. One is our public school teachers. They're called upon to be guidance counselors, social workers, teachers, assistant principals, maybe not principals, and our police officers. Our police officers are dealing with more domestic abuse than ever before, more property theft. Violent crime is trending down, but they're also mental health counselors, substance use counselors, administering Narcan. I mean, there are real issues in this city. Some stem from quality of life issues. Hopefully with more resources we can begin to address those. And some just deal with threatening of life issues. And we as a society have to come together and deal with those compassionately from the ground up.
First, I just want to say I'm sorry that you have to go through that. I see your frustration and I feel your frustration, and I too go through it sometimes. I don't have a solution for that. I believe, when we do get more police, we need to have police that are able and well equipped and that are willing to enforce these ordinances. But I mean, I don't have much room. I'm really sorry that you're going through that.
Okay. You're right. We have stopped being neighborly in the city of Providence. When I first moved here, I knew all my neighbors, absolutely every single one of them, because the way I grew up was know your neighbors. Know if you are needed at any time in case something happens to your neighbors. I've lived next to neighbors who their house was burned down, and another neighbor had to run into the flames to get the elderly woman out of the building before it burned down. So, knowing your neighbors is definitely important. In the city of Providence, there's such a huge turnover of those neighbors that when we have people who stay in the city and live in the city and the turnaround around them is so intense, we tend to get into this race of not knowing our neighbors and not caring who lives next to us. When it comes to the noise ordinance, I completely understand where you're coming from, and it is a 10 o'clock shutoff as well. I don't think that calling it in and them telling you, there's not really much they can do about it is the answer. I think someone needed to have come out to that residence and address the situation, because clearly that is a complaint. You're calling them. That is a complaint in and of itself. So it should have been dealt with.
Excuse me, what's your name?
Teresa.
Teresa. But I do apologize for that. But those are things that that's what neighborhood increasing the manpower of the Providence Police. Basically, one of the things we're talking about is quality of life, neighborhood policing. So once we have neighborhood policing, those are things that are right back around there. So they should be able to know everyone that live in the neighborhood, kind of like instead of you calling, then we have for someone collecting that message and giving it to the police for police to come and take it 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. But those are things neighborhood policing can help. So because they know everyone, just walk right down there and say, hey guys, reduce the noise level. This person want to go to bed, they have to go to work the next day. So those are some of the things we're talking about, like increasing the number of police in the city. But I think every one of us should be able to work, getting our homes at night, trying to sleep, because my neighbor, the people right behind me, they blast our music out. So when I call the cops, say, I go through the same exact thing that you're going through also. But I think neighborhood policing should try to be able to fix that. And talking about neighborhood, when I right up Duke Street, because I grew up at 14 Duke Street, those are when I came as a refugee from Liberia. I knew everyone in Duke Street, like the next street over, and the next street over, George Street, down the corner, everywhere else. So I think those are things we have to build again, that we look up at each other. Those are things that not in the neighborhood anymore, but those are things that we have to keep, trying to bring back the fabric of that within our community.
Sir?
20 years ago or so, the Senate District 1 was a lot smaller. But within Senate District 1, we had water fire And it gave an awful lot of pride because it was in our neighborhood. It was in District 1. What do you see as a senator? What can you do to give us back a sense of pride in Senate District 1?
Anyone want to jump on? You can take that for sure. That was a big question.
That's a very good question because when I do my canvassing and talking to the neighbors, one of the things that they did mention was exactly that. And historically, Senate District 1 was an industrial type neck of the woods, if you want to call it, of Providence. And they had a lot more, family cookouts. They had a lot more parades. They had a lot more community engagement than what they do now. We need to look into bringing those back. Like I said, we have such an array of different cultures that can celebrate and bring things and bring events back into the streets of District 1. That's something that we need to look into, like right now, because we do need that camaraderie. I know that the Cadence Street block party was a huge hit with the kids and with the families. Everybody was out, and I, for one, felt safe in that kind of environment. I felt that everybody was there on a good vibe, a good accord. They wanted to see people, meet people, and the kids were having a blast. That's what I love to see as well. So definitely bringing back a lot more of the festivals, even like a Festival of Lights, or having things that are more kid-friendly. This part of the city is not very kid-friendly outside of playgrounds. So we need to come up with more things that the kids can do to be more engaged, especially bring in our older generation so that they understand where they live.
I think as an elected official representing Senate District 1, my primary focus when it came to restoring pride or just reinvigorating or continuing to invest in the community, I would start with reinvesting in our public spaces. And so that's our parks, our schools, and our public buildings. When we talk about our parks, we've made some great progress. Rep. Goodwin fought to make sure that the Woonasquatucket River was included in the green bond. I think they were able to invest about $6 million in that. And you're starting to see that revitalization take place. We talk about our schools, but it's also important that you listen to the community when it comes to improving our schools. They're going to be investing money in Kazarian Elementary. We better make sure that when they do that, they don't disrupt the lovely park that's right next door. I know that's a big concern in Miss Althea's. And certainly, it's been my daily commute for the last 6-7 years. We need to recognize that Route 44, Smith Street, is the gateway to our Capitol building. And I think that we could really drive an investment of public funds into that and really it could use a facelift. And it doesn't help that that bridge has now been under construction for the last 2 years. That certainly makes it annoying. But I think we need to recognize and appreciate that we are part of the Capitol right here. And we need to say that loud and proud and make sure that we get some investment and work to coordinate services with DOT, which is right there, and state roads, which are right there, and keep them clean.
Switch it. Let me give you this one.
I agree with a couple of the ideas that were floated around by my colleagues. In particular, the block parties. I had a great time at the Cannon Street block party. I had a great time at the Chaparral block party. Just having more of those, as well as investment in our green spaces and our public spaces. And I think one thing that is really underutilized in our community are libraries. Really amplifying and investing in libraries. Libraries are such a wonderful resource, and we can really, really use those for so many different things and to really bring our community together. So yeah, so the parks, green spaces, libraries, and block parties, and now help build community within our community.
And
I do agree with almost everything that my colleagues said. So we're, again, just to take pride in Smith Hill investment Smithfield is like ideally located in a place right next to downtown. So there's not like we can probably create a much more like investment and businesses in there to make our work, to make our district, to rebrand our district. So those are things that as the next senator will be working on to make sure that those things happen. And also that can also bring back jobs for our young people that live in the district also. So as you go to school, like we have few middle schools, in our district. And so with those like so creating jobs and investment where Smithfield is located, I think, and community is going back again. We that live within that, like start to talk to each other, build our rebrand our neighborhood, that we look out for each other as neighbors. Those are things that we have to go back again to the fundamentals of like building neighborhoods.
Okay, I'm going to go to Pat Ford, and I'll go right over to you guys.
Excellent. In 2019, just months removed from overwhelming public opposition to tax subsidies for the Pawtucket Red Sox, the Rhode Island State Legislature assumed and approved a TIF district, a special tax financing district, for what is now known as Tidewater Landing, which also allowed them to use a Trump-era tax dodge for capital gains treatment to essentially subsidize risk and, well, privatize profit. Given the opportunity now, just a few years later, particularly with what you know about yet another 38 hashtag, would you have voted in support of that, or would you have supported, additionally, the corporate welfare that was doled out for the Superman building? Thank you.
I was a no on both of those. Because, again, it goes back to giving, exemptions to people who don't really need it with the hopes of an investment into our area, and it always falls short. I think we need to just reinvest into the people rather than into companies.
Two questions, Tidewater and then Superman. Tax credits in general. So the single biggest form of tax credits that has been shown, at least in my experience, to provide economic stimulus, and from the ground up it so happens to be in the highest return on investment, is increasing the earned income tax credit, the state match. And so that's what I would always advocate for if I'm elected to the state senate. As far as what we're seeing over at Tidewater, you're right, that wasn't Trump-era tax design. It wasn't, I had equity zones in my head. That's obviously not what it was. It was,
Right.
What was it called? Sorry.
Yeah, they basically take an area, essentially condemn it, and describe...
Opportunity zone, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and allow capital gains.
I think all that that's proved to do is exacerbate the fact that the economic recovery coming out of COVID has been a K-shaped recovery where the rich feel richer and the poor feel poorer. And that is absolutely what we're not supposed to do as a government. We're supposed to provide strong social safety nets so that people can get by. And I think back about 2021 when we put ourselves on a path to $15 an hour. We're not even there yet. $15 an hour isn't nearly what it was back in 2019. So I think we need to look at raising our minimum wage again. And certainly when it comes to Superman, if we're going to talk about a state subsidy, public dollars, putting that much into a particular property, I feel like the state should get some skin in the game. So one thing that I thought about openly, talked about, was if we really feel like we need to keep Superman open, it seems like it will be perfectly designed for maybe a URI Providence campus, because it's built in 3 tiers. You have an open air space on the bottom, you have what could maybe be construed into classroom space on that second tier with larger rooms, and then it could be homes up top. But I'm very fearful of throwing public dollars into a project where there's no return necessarily, or at least no equity stake for the state.
So can I just follow up? Is that a yes or no? Do you support corporate welfare?
Do I support corporate welfare?
$5 million from the city of Providence to a multi-billion-dollar developer who's made a fortune building market baskets. Do you believe that's appropriate?
Do I support a tax stabilization agreement for Superman?
No. Do you support giving money to private developers and/or tax breaks with outright grants whether it be Fame,
No.
whether it be Superman, whether it be Tidewater Landing?
An outright grant for a private building? No.
Right, so you would have voted against that, okay.
I think there's a couple components there. I would not give a grant to a private developer.
So I would not support a Tidewater, and I also would have not supported the Superman.
No, I would support that. I think we've learned about 30 years studios that were graphics, so definitely that.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to present a question that's more personal and including everyone in the audience to kind of participate in whatever comes up next. First thing I want to say is I work at CBS and Distribution Center, the warehouse, for $20.75 an hour. $20.75 an hour is the new $15 an hour. And that bathroom that I just attended in there is 3 times as clean as the one that they put out in the building. So it's very nice to be. But Michelle Rivera, you have a hat that says Army on it. Were you in the Army? How did you feel about the fact that you gave up your freedom to be in the Army, and was it worth it? Were you in the Army?
Yes, I was in the Army. I joined at 17, and I served 3 years with winter in Afghanistan.
Okay, that's all you can say about it. What about that withdrawal from Afghanistan? Is that a complete disaster, or who cares?
No, I think it was a complete disaster. I was definitely disappointed with the withdrawal and the way how it went.
Yeah, basically, we lost that war. From what I can tell, after 20 years into it. Jake, I understand, but Jake, you're running for state senate, and a lot of these questions were like, how you going to solve problems that are practically impossible, such as homeless, how you going to get people back in homes, people don't even earn money, $20 an hour to pay for where they're going to live. You work for Ruggiero, what's his name? Is that the Senate? How much money do you make at being a senator? What's the salary?
That's not relevant.
I'm not.
The salary is not relevant.
It's not relevant to this conversation.
Well,
You've been very open about it, so if you want to answer, you can
Finish
answer.
your question, and then
The
I'll
salary of this job that's not
But
relevant?
it's public record, so I mean, I don't know why you would ask it.
I'm okay answering
You know,
it.
it's public
Sir, is your
record.
question complete?
Okay.
Have you had enough of me?
Hold on.
No, sir.
No,
I'm
it's
just
gonna be,
saying,
you have to wrap up.
stay
It's getting close.
focused.
I didn't know the question was going to go this long, it's not.
What's your question?
What is the salary for a
What is
state
my
senator?
salary?
Anybody
For
know?
my salary for
Anybody?
the state senate.
Yeah.
Huh?
What's my salary?
Is it $20,000 to be a state senator? Is that the salary? That's what it used to be. Is it still that?
They gave you an 8% raise this year in the legislature, it's 19,000. So you asked about my salary, right? I just want to make sure you're done speaking before I get into this.
Answer it any way you want, if that's okay.
So I came to Providence to go to Providence College. I got really lucky. I worked as chief of staff to the Providence City Council for 3.5 years. Right after I got my MBA from Providence College in nonprofit and government administration. I graduated in 2010. I worked for $60,000 a year for 3.5 years, and then I decided that I wanted to go to law school. While I was in law school, I was able, during my second year, to get a job working as a policy analyst for the House of Representatives, making $21,000 a year. I had that job for 2 years, and then I made $50,000 a year, about $55,000 a year, as I finished up law school. I worked full-time while I was in law school, full-time. And there were really tough times. Taking out student loans, utility bills causing my utilities to get shut off, joining gyms just to take hot showers. So when I talk about those individuals down at Charles Place, I can somewhat relate, because there were times when things were very hard. But there's also other lived experiences up here that are important to hear. Life can get challenging for all sorts of folks. And then I was given an opportunity to work in the state senate, where I got to work with some good state leaders, one of which was the late Whip Goodwin. And for the first time, 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to serve as chief of staff to the state senate. And that does come with a lot of responsibility and a good public salary. And it is not lost on me that is a public salary of $180,000 a year. My student loans are $172,000. And so I have made that salary for the last 2 years. If I was to be fortunate enough to serve this great district, where I think a lot of effort could go a long way, I would be taking a $160,000 pay cut. And I have no job lined up. I just, quite frankly, think that given my experiences, my experience in the state senate, uniquely knowing the job of a state senator, that I could do a good job. I mean, I think this area needs someone to keep doing a good job.
That brings us to 8 o'clock. I have to call it.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent answer, almost worth a round of applause.
Thank you.
Can I ask the question, please?
I'll go one more quick question.
My husband wants-
Oh, sorry, I thought it was you. Yep, it's all good.
So I missed the last debate you guys had a couple weeks ago. My wife was there. She wanted me to question about segregation in correctional facilities came up. That hits home close to me. I'm a correctional officer, not a Rhode Island, but nice. Now my question is this. See, going real quick, I think there's a lot of stigma on correctional segregation, and people deem it as a punishment when it's actually more of safety and security for both staff and inmates as well. If you are against it, what is your solution to ensure safety and security for both the staff members and incarcerated individuals?
So what exactly is the question? So is this about?
So if you're against segregation, people get in fights or whatever.
Segregation is commonly called solitary.
I was just going to say, is this
That's
solitary
segregation.
confinement? Okay.
Yeah, segregation.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Like I said at the last debate, I look at it from a medical standpoint because I'm a nurse and I've worked in psych for over 12 and a half years. And when we had complications where a resident or a client of the hospital was in a situation where they were deemed a danger to themselves or the unit, we did put them in an isolated area by themselves, aka the padded room, also known as a quiet room, but there was someone there with them at all times. It was something that was a doctor's order, it was monitored, that person was never by themselves and not observed. In the corrections, maybe implementing something like that, because I know you have healthcare in-house as well. I'm not sure how much staff they have when it comes to that because I'm not privy to that information, but perhaps reaching out to the mental health side of things and trying to reform it in that way.
That already happens. If there's a mental health case,
Okay.
they are visually, watched all the time.
That's the only thing I can speak of then. That's the only thing I
I'm
can
talking
speak
more
of.
of,
If you want to eliminate solitary
Like,
confinement, what would the solution be in regards to the individual who will self-harm or harm another person or harm staff?
But if you're having self-harm, that is
self-harm would be fall under the mental health aspect.
Exactly.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about more of gang fights, assaulting
Yeah.
other people, assaulting stuff. Just
What's the
team
solution?
battle.
What's the
Yes.
solution to that? I don't have a solution to that.
Because the brand name that you hear nowadays, statewide, nationally is, oh, we gotta end solitary confinement. So what is the solution? That's what I would like to know.
I don't have a solution, and I don't think we should end it if there's no solution,
Well,
because that's
the
opening up
problem. And
another,
the solution.
yeah.
That's reasonable.
Unless there's a reasonable solution, I don't think that it should be ended in that sense, because, you know, this is a community conversation. These are questions that we should be asking the community, especially if their family members are in there. Just to say that we're just going to let everybody roam free and all the dangers happen in there, is the state then held liable for all of this? You know what I mean? So there are a lot of things that have to go into that. They really have to think about how they're going to treat that situation if it's not a mental health concern.
I would add that the state just recently reached a consensus through the courts in Rhode Island about solitary limiting its use, but not eliminating its use, and just putting what they call guardrails on its use within this within the prison system here in Rhode Island, ACI. And I think also this year we had like 2 or 3 people committing suicide, at least 2 of them in solitary while it was going on. So that's kind of some of the atmosphere that this is coming out of. So I don't think they say eliminate it entirely or not give people time alone, but trying to put limits that don't mean you get 30, 40, 50, 60 days in a row for repeated infractions while you're in solitary. Is my understanding. I could be a little bit off.
Anybody else have a comment on it?
Anyone else have a comment they want to make on that, or are we? Okay, I think we're good. We're past 8 o'clock, and so I think we're kind of past our due date. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm going to call it. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope this was informative and helpful to everybody trying to make a decision. I think everybody here did an amazing job, and yeah, I look forward to see what happens next week. It'll be exciting. Oh, you're good next week. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to be here. It really shows you care about your community, so thank you.
And folks, that is it for tonight. We'll be sharing this on our YouTube channel and all over the great state of Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio on the Mighty Mighty, Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at CoalitionRadioNetwork.com. You can ask your friends to follow us or like us or share us. I'm not above begging, so let me know. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.